Was Alex Yard betrayed by Sparky's World, the guy who made the 8-hour video Sonic CD, the Unsung masterpiece? Well, you should not bother watching this video if you already trust in my integrity and honesty, or if you've commended my bravery because I provide a minority opinion in the internet's ocean of emotional backlash. This discussion here today is really only for the doubters, so if you're on board with the mission statement of this channel, you could spare yourself this video. Now, I get disparaging attacks all the time, but it's easy to disregard when it comes from anonymous internet users. That's why I try not to platform it or spend much time responding to it, because I know my audience wants me to spend time on the next actual project, not just bickering with over-emotional YouTube commenters. But it's different when a public figure with a reputation joins the angry mob. The mob that wants me to leave the internet and video game music community. Well, suddenly there's a more practical and sensible reason to respond publicly. And today that person who stepped in to speak up is Sparky's World. Another thing you might know Sparky for, remember the 2025 incident where that modder in the Sonic community went missing and was found to have taken her own life? Sparky stepped in to say, "Oh, she was one of my followers. She liked or commented on my posts." That's where Sparky's mind went. He wanted to tell everyone, "Hey, I have a connection to this tragic tweet with 20 million views." That's a quick telegraph of Sparky's core priorities. So let's take a look at the statement Sparky retweeted to stand in solidarity to amplify the exclusionary harassment of the people that want me, Alex Yard, to leave the community. It reads as follows.
Since this guy is still attacking video game composers, I'm just going to put it out there that he's 100% incompatible with the video game music sphere. There is no place for this anti-artist mindset, and he desperately needs to chill out.
Now, my response to backlash like this is already thoroughly covered in multiple music composition videos that I've made on the topic. I could answer questions about that in the comments below, but what I'm instead going to do in this video is explain why this vague rhetoric is impossible to take seriously coming from Sparky's World. Sparky is an especially abysmal judge of character, and his naive jeers mean nothing once you learn what actually makes him cheer. I have extensive knowledge of the contents of Sparky's character because he was once a regular viewer of my live streams and a big supporter and viewer of my music theory videos. I was one of the reasons the Unsung Masterpiece CD video became the production it now is. Sparky was present for a couple of significant events in the community, and his participation in each scenario revealed the contents of his character as spineless. On his way out, he did acknowledge he had some growing to do as a person. And that's why I showed some mercy by biting my tongue for a time with no plans to say anything. That is, until Sparky joined the mob that wants to cast me out. Sparky was already on supremely thin ice and appears to be utterly oblivious about what's happening here. So this video will demonstrate how Sparky's abysmal integrity compass is calibrated by demonstrating what Sparky rejects, which now includes me, compared to the shameful kinds of dangerous people that Sparky celebrates and platforms. Sparky looks the other way at a lot of nasty stuff, so this video will detail a broad strokes glimpse into 2 case studies that we were both privy to, for which Sparky was a dangerously poor judge of character. Part 1 of this video will detail the time that Sparky stood by the sociopath. Part 2 of this video will detail the occasion Sparky stood by the pimp. And by the end of it, you folks watching this video here now may have no idea what to say. You may be utterly speechless, which is fine. It's just a matter of being informed. You can decide what to do with that information. So we'll start by revisiting the occasion in which Sparky stood by the sociopath. Now, the sociopath is a code name for a person who is a content creator in the Sonic community and who used to watch my videos and streams. He eventually confessed his sociopathy, but I figured it out long before Sparky. Sparky strained to give the sociopath all benefit of the doubt. Sparky belittled the sociopathic attacks on me that were obvious to others. Now, things started out pleasant because the sociopath watched my video 25% of Sonic 3, and he had questions. And of course, that's by design. We had a great Discord call where he asked me follow-up questions, and he very fairly challenged me on certain parts of my 25% treatise. He told me he would make a response video, and he wanted to touch base with me to get my take on his dissenting opinions. Excellent. Now, the video he made did include a shout-out to me in my video and a great deal of praise, and he didn't agree with everything in my video, but he absolutely acknowledged it as great food for thought that observed aspects of the Sonic identity that he had never noticed or considered, as in meaningful observations about what's actually happening in Genesis Sonic games. But then later that same week, he shadow-dropped a surprise Part 2 video, which was a total about-face 180. A surprise gotcha of sorts. Surprise, your 25% video is all wrong. He brought in all these new gotcha points that were never mentioned at any point in our Discord call and communications. Now, this Part 2 surprise video was ultimately just firing blanks at a straw man. And the fact that he didn't run anything by me the way he did for Part 1 tells you everything. He even took down the Part 2 video once I thoroughly debunked it in a response stream. So do you want to know why I stand confidently by the 25% video to this day? It's because the only person who stepped up with any substantive rebuttal had to engage in premeditated deception. I called it out for what it was, an unsuccessful attempt to humiliate me with a surprise cooking. I knew exactly what had happened, but Sparky's naivete was incapable of recognizing it. Sparky even disparaged and belittled me, Alex Yard, by saying, "Oh, Alex, come on, you're reading into it too much. It wasn't some attack. You gotta relax." I held my line, and I refused to accept the sociopath's convenient cop-out. Because this content creator was like, "Who, me? No, I didn't make the Part 2 video to attack you. I just changed my mind after playing the game some more." I rejected these denials, and the sociopath finally relented and confessed everything by saying the following. "I have said multiple times that I did not mean to attack you with the video. You have called my bullshit on that. And you are right. My true intentions with the video in regards to you is I wanted to test you. I dehumanized you to something I wanted to see if I could break. I am truly, deeply sorry. I hurt you, and I wanted to. I have long since considered I might be slightly sociopathic." Those are the excerpts from the core of his admissions. He attempted to hurt me, but he only succeeded in surprising me and thus amusing me, which ultimately led to overall validation. Now, when I brought this shocking development to Sparky as a Sonic community pal, the only correct response from Sparky would be, "Alex, I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry I doubted and belittled his surprise attack video. It's good that we identified this bad egg so we can keep our distance from this type of hateful deception." But instead, really the only thing Sparky could even bring himself to say was, "That's very illuminating." And then as time went by, Sparky continued mentioning the sociopath casually, like say, "Hey, Pariah695 had an interesting video about nights into dreams." The sociopath is Pariah695, by the way. Sparky's Sonic CD video, the Unsung Masterpiece, even has 2 different shoutouts to the sociopath by showing his logo on screen. So what this case study reveals about the contents of Sparky's character is that Sparky has no problem with what the sociopath did because it doesn't personally affect Sparky. So with that logic, perhaps Sparky has no problem with what the completionist did because it doesn't personally affect Sparky. If the completionist says that his foundation is currently working with the University of San Francisco as one of their main funding support partners, Sparky is perhaps not bothered because he doesn't work for that university and he didn't give the completionist charity money. So that's what Sparky stands for, himself. So as we conclude this first case study about the sociopath, understand that Sparky joining the crowds to cast me out of the gaming music community is a hollow, empty gesture. because Sparky's much bigger priority is associating with prominent content creators who can get Sparky the most interesting Sonic information, as well as networking connections that can increase his status and visibility as a Sonic influencer. And now you're going to find out just how deep that agenda runs in our second case study about the pimp. We'll call him the pimp today because he had the word pimp in his username. He became known to me initially when he became a patron, and he's also known to Sparky for his well-known Sonic CD mod. If this is sounding familiar, you may have seen Sparky's eventual Twitter thread reporting allegations of inappropriate conduct involving minors. So the thing with the pimp is, all the warning signs were there all along. But for a time, there was nothing specific that he could be called out for. Like, technically, he was abiding by the terms of service as far as we could see. But the pimp fostered a small circle of followers, primarily of people around 20 years younger than himself. And they idolized him. They regarded him as the ultimate adventure guide for video games, speed running, and he even offered to watch 90s MTV sitcom episodes together, where the pimp would explain all the references. It was a severely imbalanced, delicate power dynamic. A 16-year-old should not be regarding a 40-year-old as his best friend if he only knows him through the internet. That's a vulnerable kid. The pimp took the 16-year-old in as his protege, guiding the 16-year-old through a speedrunning hobby and coaching him all along with tips, tricks, and cheerleading throughout. So although there was nothing official that I could object to and intervene on, the next best thing I could do was to keep an eye on the situation and make sure that the pimp was not flooding these impressionable kids with inflated praise to make them feel special within that imbalanced power dynamic. So, the straw that broke the camel's back was the day that the 16-year-old began jumping for joy because he got a new personal best speedrun time of Sonic CD in under 10 minutes. But it was specifically in the modded software the pimp created. And the only reason the 16-year-old broke 10 minutes was because the pimp handed him a new trick exploit, bouncing off enemies in a special way or something. So here the 16-year-old is deriving all his self-worth and confidence from speedrunning, and it's the only thing he ever posts about anymore. And he is now celebrating what is an artificial victory that had been handed to him by the architect. The architect who was pulling the strings within the modded game in a highly controlled environment, and the pimp was making ongoing changes to the mod's code. So an ongoing speedrunning chart is meaningless if the game just keeps changing. So I stepped in and objected to pouring all this artificial praise. Well, the pimp would not stand for this. He made a big volatile speech condemning me, and then he stormed out of my patron community permanently. What did I do? Just like with the sociopath, I explicitly warned Sparky about all of this. And once again, what Sparky had to say in response was almost nothing beyond his navel-gazing inner monologue. What he did manage to say included, from an outsider perspective, Alex's comments about the speedrun could come off as needlessly unkind. So in his response, there was zero acknowledgement of the problem or how to go about addressing it. It was really just, Alex, you came across as unkind and maybe you can make things right with the 16-year-old. Now, I'm not even going to touch that here today. I am instead going to tell you how things got much worse and how I continued warning Sparky about this pimp to no avail. Instead of a drawn-out explanation, I'm going to instead put on screen this list of major red flags that I explicitly warned Sparky about, so pause and read if you must. Suffice it to say that when someone goes underground and starts using alt accounts, that should be a huge concern. But despite all of my warnings, Sparky totally brushed it all off. What did Sparky do with this information? Nothing. He proceeded to publish his Sonic CD Unsung masterpiece video, which gave the pimp a glowing spotlight on 2 occasions. He spotlit a screenshot of the pimp's glorified self-bio that boasted about his entire resume, and more importantly, Sparky included the pimp in the end screen, where he thanked all the figures in the community whose discussions were built upon in Sparky's 8-hour video. Knowing everything that he knew about the pimp that I warned Sparky about, Sparky went ahead and immortalized the pimp name and profile pic in his capstone video at this timestamp. So what this means is that Sparky's video will forever include the pimp's profile picture with the green and brown colors that evoke the smelly smells that Sparky would later report on. That is the comeuppance Sparky has to live with as the consequence of his stubborn rose-colored glasses. And then in Sparky's eventual condemnation statement about the pimp, Sparky had some wormy nerve to say this: "The pimp and I have only ever had amicable interactions, but that has zero bearing on these disturbing and specific allegations." Now, for Sparky to say this is dishonest and incomplete. I provided Sparky with lots of serious red flags about non-amicable interactions he was having with other people. So Sparky is a dishonest worm. He doesn't care about what the pimp did to other people because it doesn't affect Sparky. Sparky does stand for the highest bidders, not so much in money payments, but really whoever offers the most interesting sonic information and networking opportunities to increase the range of his sonic influencer aspirations. There may also be poop on the Geek Critique's hands, because shortly after that 10-minute speedrun Fallout incident, the Geek Critique was seen cheering on the 16-year-old speedrun victory on Twitter. It doesn't seem like a coincidence, because the pimp was known to seek out people in my orbit, especially people that I've had former disagreements with, to try to persuade them further that I'm a bad egg, and the pimp used dishonest, untruthful means in the process. So since I have a history of a high-stakes disagreement with the Geek Critique, which the pimp used to harp on repeatedly, it is unlikely that the Geek Critique's encouragement of this random 16-year-old speedrunner was an unrelated coincidence. It appeared the Geek Critique cheered him on as if to say, "Take that, Alex." So, Josh, the Geek Critique, let us know, Josh, if the pimp never talked to you. Otherwise, a suggestion is that Josh could reach out to that 16-year-old to ensure he understands that the pimp is a danger, that he should stay away from the pimp at all costs. There's a concern that the 16-year-old doesn't fully understand the severity of the pimp's danger, and that he only really perceives the pimp's community exit as an unfortunate circumstance, in which this 16-year-old lost his best friend, the pimp, who has pimp in his username. So for the Geek Critique to cheer on those bogus modified speedruns in an effort to spite me, there may be poop on his hands that needs to be washed pronto. We're almost done. The last comment to direct in Sparky's direction is this: "You are a naive child. You've admitted you have growing to do, and in the meantime, defer to my judgment." Let's connect it all back to how Sparky platformed the take that Alex Yard is 100% incompatible with the community in which he participates, that I am persona non grata to be exiled. This gesture that Sparky amplified by retweeting is the sort of thing that he should have instead said about the sociopath and about the pimp. But instead he welcomed them in with open arms, broke bread with them, glorified them in his big video Sonic CD, the Unsung masterpiece. Every now and then I'm haunted by the time Sparky tweeted a gameplay clip. "I learned this trick from a pimp named Ouija." So, here's the post-credits finale twist, everybody. Are you ready for this? What did I, Alex Yard, do to earn Sparky's condemnation as a bridge too far that is not welcome in his society? I asked a composer a question. I asked, how much are you willing to take from another composer's work without of acknowledgement of a based-on credit? That was the question that I asked. So guys, reality check. I am a private citizen. I asked another private citizen a question. It's between me and him, exclusively. It's got nothing to do with you or anyone else. If you don't like my opinions or my personality, your move is to vote with your wallet and viewership. Swipe me into the trash if you encounter me on a dating app. That is the most that you can say. If I walk into the public square with opinion A, your move is to respond with opinion B, not telling me to leave the public square in this rivalry of ideas. If you instead resort to falling back on pressuring me away from the public square, What you're doing in that moment is providing overwhelming evidence that the observations I provided are substantive and meaningful, things that need to be said because too many people are afraid to say it. Social media is in its early infancy, and in our time, many people with the best integrity lack all conviction to act on it, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. So from now on, you know what it means when Sparky co-signs on a condemnation of 100% incompatible with the community because the unfortunate double standard is revealed here today. Word to the wise. When the haters want to condemn or exile me, if the person who says this is a nobody, it can be ignored easily. Or, if you are a somebody, I may respond.